Video games are art. Yes, this ultimately does mean that something like Super Battle Golf could be considered an art piece.
Can you guys stop?
7 goals for Fortnite.
It's Snake!
Or Futafix Stick Dine and Dash. As with any art form, there are multiple layers to it. Not every sculpture is remembered as being historically significant. Not every music composition is on the same level as a Mozart. The artists who drew the characters in Futafix Stick Dine and Dash did not try to compete with the likes of a Vincent van Gogh, even if the tools, reference pieces, and knowledge that they used might have technically allowed for significantly higher detailed artworks than what Van Gogh created back in 1890. Highguard is a game that released in 2026. Highguard is also a game that shuts down in 2026. Exactly on the day of me uploading this video, probably. It's been available to play for about 45 days. I am not going to cry wolf, pretend like this is a huge hit to the wider industry. In fact, I'm going to say it's going to end up like just another fluke in the greater live service genre, talked about for now and forgotten about by tomorrow, until someone brings it up as the butt of a joke in yet another discussion about video games. But there's one thing that irks me. One thing that absolutely pains me to see. And one thing that I'm very obviously a part of. The toxic gamer culture in regards to how these titles are treated. Yes, the reveal at the Game Awards was overkill. Yes, the game was a mishmash of everything popular and pivoted too heavily in a competitive direction. Yes, it was unpolished, ran like shit, and was 30% fun parts with 70% overwhelmingly boring parts. No, I don't think the negativity this game has received was very fair in the grander scheme of things. No, I don't think it's fair to shut this game down after just 45 days of uptime, rendering it unplayable for everyone. No, it's not fair to say that the developers of this should go back to work in the AAA sphere, from which they spawned from. Or should I say respawned from? A lot of the people that do believe the negativity and shutdown are justified also rallied behind the insanely popular Stop Killing Games initiative not too long ago, probably missing the point of it and not realizing that this game also falls under the umbrella. But in this case, for them, it's fine, because this game ended up being an underwhelming reveal at the Game Awards, despite the fact that they didn't even pay for the slot. And so, hating it into the ground was justified and based and totally awesome and cool. This section was probably a little polarizing and could get heavily taken out of context, in which case I'm looking forward to what people can misconstrue this as. But I fully believe that Highguard, for all its flaws, did not deserve more than half of the hate that it received. I mean, let's be honest here. The game survived less than 2 months. This just doesn't seem fair, does it? Let's establish one big thing from the get-go. Yes, the game did receive Tencent funding. Approximately $200 million. This explains the first question. Where did they even come from? Tencent invested a lot of money in this project, which they're likely never going to get back. Which is why they're pulling out entirely, and basically left the developers to rot, just about a day after the game's launch. Obviously, no publisher now wants to pick up Highguard, since they're basically a fish out of water. As is the case with a lot of live service games, it's difficult to find a good, cheap and easy way to let players continue playing without accruing server costs over the next couple of years. For all the good and bad that Unreal does, it seemingly doesn't allow a straightforward way to let players host their own servers for the hypothetical community-run Highguard sessions, if anyone was even interested in attempting this. More technically speaking here, since the game ships as is with a server located somewhere else entirely, it's hard to get our hands on said server files to host it privately for our own use cases, unless some kind developer who hasn't been laid off yet finds out a means of changing that in the 24 hours before the studio gets shut down entirely. In short, this means rest in piss, Highguard.
I am a warden, and this is my oath.
You better spend a lot of money on the microtransactions or this game is gonna go under. As a lot of people had already gone over what's wrong with this game, I don't really feel like I have much more to add in that regard. However, there's one point that irks me, so I'll add this as a part 2 to make sure that my little rant from earlier has something attached to it to make it look a little more controversial. All the post-launch content for Highguard genuinely did nothing but drive the point home that the developers didn't listen to the fans, overcorrected, and then basically ruined their entire vision of a game. For those who are unaware, matches play out in a pretty straightforward way. You start out at your base, reinforcing walls to fend off attackers for one of the later phases. With skills, and this is point number 1, you can reinforce multiple walls at once, and even stronger than before. Skills were added post-launch. They are a terrible idea, making new players essentially way weaker for no apparent reason, in an intended semi-competitive environment. These skills also include faster sprinting and mantling speeds, a literal 50% chance to find a higher rarity item than is usually possible during your current phase, giving you a straightforward advantage over others. Better gear is always a straight upgrade. A blue shotgun is better than a white one. So with the right skill, which you unlock pretty late in your account life, you can give yourself a major competitive advantage in a slightly luck-based looting side element of the game, which then ties into all the other major elements. Oh yeah, this is also the most boring part. Mining Vesper crystals, which can be used as currency to buy better items. There's skills to mine more. There's also skills to give mined Vespers to teammates. Sometimes. And if you don't have it, and hog all the Vesper crystals, then the rest of your team is going to suffer as a consequence. Obviously, this is a factor that is less of an issue if you're playing with friends, where you can easily communicate, but it doesn't really feel as if the team is really connected at any given point, with everyone having their own selfish goals to work towards before the actual squad play even starts. Obviously, on release this wasn't much better, but adding a skill system that lets newbies not only go through the growing pains of trying to get used to the mechanics, but also quite literally having them be cannon fodder to more experienced enemies and a nuisance to teammates who will both likely chew them up and spit them out. This is terrible design overall, but it gets worse. So much worse. One major complaint people have brought up in the past is how the 3v3 gameplay simply didn't work. This is partially true. Reluctantly, shortly after launch, the developers added 5v5. Nothing was adjusted to account for the higher amount of players. This should probably be the point where I mention the fact that this is a hero shooter. If you've ever played any, you'll know that impressive ult combinations are the bane of any hero shooter, and a big reason why people are so tired of the genre. It's probably also a big reason why I'm so hesitant to get into Deadlock, despite the fact that they literally made a character just for me. Anyway, yeah, 5v5 was a mistake. Highguard does not work in 5v5. Almost every element gets downgraded for upgrading the teams to 5 players. Let me explain. Gunfights in 5v5 are way too messy, chaotic, and you find yourself outgunned very quickly. Proper squad play doesn't really happen unless there's already 1 or 2 pieces missing. The looting section that happens at the start of the match and after every raid is boring. The map is way too big, and adding 5v5 to this does not fix it. But adding 5v5 to the raids makes them so much worse. Even just the shield breaker tug of war ends up being dragged down by the higher player count. In the context of having long respawn timers and relatively long gunfights, it's way more tense and exciting to battle for the objectives when things are relatively under control. The game just feels a lot more focused in 3v3, and I absolutely did have a blast here and there. That being said, I obviously spent a lot more time in 5v5, because that was the most popular playlist, and the one that everybody played. I also did end up getting every achievement in the game, which is kinda sad. But hey, all in all, I guess I did have my fun with Highguard. It's a shame that I won't be able to see it have a revival arc of some sort, but the industry moves forth, and I'll have to ride the wave until the next squad-based shooter rolls around the corner that isn't a battle royale or an extraction shooter. In the meantime, I've been playing tons of games, and I've been having fun, moving from experience to experience and enjoying myself rather than jumping on any unnecessary anti-hype trains, as fun as they might be.
Oh, here you go.
Well, except for Payday 3. I still want that one to leave the station and go somewhere. Anyway, as usual, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings, and I hope you're taking care of yourself.